Okay, and we are live. Cool. All right, perfect. Awesome. Okay, guys, so hello, welcome back to Staying Connected. It's been a little while since I've actually done one of these, so I need to kind of get back in the rhythm a bit, but I'm sure it won't be too bad. Um, I don't know if you guys can notice, but I'm a little bit bunged up at the moment. I think I'm through the worst of it. I was just talking with Lily about it, and yeah, so hopefully that's not too much of a distraction, but I know that you guys are probably used to it because it's not the first time that I've been a little bit bunged up. But yeah, like I said, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Hello, Charlotte. Welcome to the stream. And so today I'm joined by Lily. So, Lily, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, please.
Absolutely. I'm Lily. I am the Participation and Engagement Officer at 1719 in Sunderland's East End.
Perfect. That's really, really cool. All right, awesome. So, Lily, what um, does that entail then, if you don't mind me asking?
An awful lot.
So if you
But
could give me like a brief kind of rundown, roughly.
so 1719 is based in Holy Trinity Church in
Yeah.
Sunderland's East End. And the idea is we are a centre for stories. We are a site of great change in Sunderland. So when 1719 was consecrated in 1719, it was a magistrates court, it was a library, it was a site of lots of like civic activity. And over the years, over the centuries, it's changed and changed and changed, just like Sunderland has changed and changed and changed. So we don't want to tell everyone what Sunderland is now. We want to talk about what it was and how it is now with people. It's very collaborative. So I run projects with people, not at them, which has been made harder by COVID,
Yeah, I
but
can imagine.
potentially also a little bit better. Like,
I know I really like the way that you know you that the wording of that because I think that's really nice. I mean, just kind of the idea of preserving something but also innovating at the same time, and I think that's really
mhm.
really cool. So yeah, that's definitely
I
something
also think it's cool,
that.
which helps.
Yeah,
Um, there's a lot that goes on in Sunderland that maybe people don't get a say in. So we want to be not one of those,
right.
um, and we want to be like it's been 7 years in the making. This regeneration, the church has had needed a massive amount of work. If at the end of it, it's only us that know about it and only us that did it, then it wouldn't be worth 7 years. So it's like a tree falling in the woods.
Yeah,
If no one else knows about it,
yeah, exactly. So, and that's a really good point I think as well. So, like so how much of a say do you have in kind of like the social media aspect of it? Is that like is that kind of very involved in your role, or is that like
yeah, social media has become a larger part of my role because obviously I started this job in March. Um, like at the very end of March. And the idea was that I was going to be going out and having cups of tea with people and
right?
like doing like real grassroots community stuff.
Awesome.
And instead, it's been a lot of like Facebook posts
Right.
and Zooms and yeah, getting the word out digitally. So I've had to, like everyone knows about social media, but I've had to upskill quite quickly.
Right, of course. Well, and I'm sure that a lot of people have as well, so I don't think you're alone in that. But yeah, I can obviously relate to that and understand that. So obviously, just to kind of touch on that, then, how initially was it for you guys, kind of moving forward with COVID? I mean, as you said, you were probably at the beginning, the first couple of months, you were like going out and kind of meeting people and kind of communicating that way. How was it to kind of all of a sudden switch, and how did you kind of adapt to that?
It was hard. So I during lockdown I was actually with my mum in Cumbria,
Right.
so I wasn't even like physically here. And that shouldn't have mattered. Like because everything was online, it shouldn't have
Yeah.
mattered that I was in a different county, but it absolutely did. So when things eased and I was able to come back, um, that made it a lot easier to sort of connect and feel like you were part of something. But what we didn't want to do, we were very focused on doing the right thing rather
Yeah.
than the thing right now. We didn't want to scrap all of our plans and change everything and then 6 months down the line have to change it again because we hadn't understood what was going to be needed. So we were very cautious. We reflected a lot. We did a lot. We had a lot of conversations about what we wanted things to be. And now that we're finally like starting to deliver things within the community, we're trying to do it to as many people as possible and in lots of different ways. It's a lot of work.
I can imagine.
Um,
I mean, you guys did amazing though, to be honest, because obviously a lot of kind of businesses and building sites and all kind of projects, so they were on hold for like a good period of time, but you guys managed to get things up and running like fairly quickly considering. So I mean, how did you guys manage to do that? I mean, that was amazing, really.
that's all down to HPR, so they're historic property renovation
Yeah,
restoration. They're great. So they're our contractors on
yeah,
the build, and they are so skilled and so knowledgeable and so well, they're so invested in the building. It's
yeah,
incredible. So usually, what happens with these projects is someone works on a site for like 7 years, gets it all ready, and then just like leaves. But what we found with HPR is they really love Holy Trinity. They've literally like stitched in love and care into the building. So we're going to have a family day just for them so that their families can come and see everything that they've done and where they've been going every day, so that they get to celebrate it. It's as much their church as ours at the end of the day. They did such a great job. And they managed to put so many really good COVID safety security things in place so quickly, like one-way systems on like 3 or 4 levels of scaffolding and socially distanced and like really well tracked and traced.
yeah.
Yeah, they've been incredible.
Definitely. Yeah. And I can vouch for that. Obviously, when I went to the site, shortly after lockdown was over, to kind of pick back up on the film, and I can definitely, there was really great measures taken in place there, and I think that was really good. Um, so can I, like, just to slightly put you on the spot a little bit, could you give like a brief introduction to what the project is for our viewers who may not be aware? Just kind of, because I know it covers a lot of different aspects, from like the craft skills side, to the specialist trades that are working on it. Could you just give like a brief introduction if that's okay?
Ooh, I don't know if I
I
could
know
do it
that's tough,
briefly.
right? It could be as long as you want. It could
as
be the
long
most
as I,
verbose
if,
thing in the world. It's fine.
as long as I don't have to like tweet it, that's
No, no,
fine.
yeah, it can be longer than 140 characters. That's okay.
So we have it like there are strands of activity that we have committed to delivering with Sunderland's communities, from things like having Christmas performances to having the community commission artists to make pieces of art. It's all participatory. It's all about the community responding to the site and like getting them to guide it and lead it and collaborate with it as much as possible. So it's and then there's a commercial side to it, so it has to be able to support itself. So there's a hire offer and a shop offer, and yeah, trying to keep craft skills alive. So obviously through restoration you discover that there are loads of skills that are dying out. So you discover that there's only one mason in the northeast who can do this very specific job. There's only so many joiners who can do this specific job. So keeping those skills alive so that in another 300 years we can call on those great tradesmen to renovate the church again. Um, it's a massive, massive project, and the whole scope of it is to try and ignite the future by looking at the past.
I like that.
Um, but it's massive.
Yeah.
it's it's not a small task.
I think that another interesting thing as well is that, obviously, with the craft skill sizes, that you guys took on a couple of young apprentices. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
is so cool, because I know that some of the young apprentices are interested in stonemasonry, and like as you were saying, that being a very specialist skill, and to be able to kind of continue that, but in the framework of the project, I think that that's also quite interesting and quite impressive.
They're a fabulous asset to the project. They bring such enthusiasm and such like like inquiry, like they're so interested in very specific things, so that the contractors sometimes have to step back and go, I'm not sure why that is, and like they have to go and do their research.
Yeah,
But also they've just made it so much better, and it's been really lovely to have them during this really weird time.
definitely.
So during COVID, when there's been this like disconnect from every element of your life, being able to support some young people to still move forward in their careers has been, makes it feel very much
Yeah.
worthwhile.
And I know that you guys were kind of solely looking for who was going to be the best candidate for the roles, but I think it's also good that they're local lads. So I think that, as you were talking about how this project, how you guys are working with the community, obviously this is upscaling skills, for these two apprentices, which I think is great, obviously within the community. So I think that's also another great aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that, so Tracy, who's my colleague, she's the centre manager. Um, she has ancestry from South Shields,
Right.
so but she is South African.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I was raised in Tyne Dock, but my ancestry is Tanzanian. So
Wow. Okay. Cool. That's really cool.
it's this weird, like, we have this idea of Macans come from all over the world. Macans
Yeah. Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
and historically that's massively true. Like Markham's, what used to be from like the community around the church used to be quite Russian, quite
Yeah.
Polish,
Yeah.
and obviously like South Shields has that massive Yemeni population historically. Like Mackham is a worldwide concept as far as I'm concerned. But yeah,
Yeah.
having those roots is great, and especially with the younger apprentices, seeing them like grow in confidence and be the best Mackhams they can be has been fab.
Definitely. And I mean, as a side note, but like, I think Tanzania is really cool. I'd love to go there. And my boss did Kilimanjaro semi recently, and it seems very very tough, but also very very amazing.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it might be on the bucket
Um,
list.
I haven't climbed Kilimanjaro, just for the record.
He was like telling me some pretty like I don't actually think I'm cut out to do it personally. Like he was saying, like the altitude sickness you get, like throwing up and like having to keep going and like feeling like disorientated and dizzy. I mean, that sounds absolutely terrifying, but I don't know. But it's weird because like it doesn't. This is like a minor tangent, but it doesn't seem to be related to fitness so much because certain people that are really fit actually get really sick. It's about how your body adapts to the altitude, from my understanding.
Yeah, I worked at altitude in Tanzania on a tea farm as a teacher.
Whoa, it's so cool. It's awesome.
And it's awful because
Right.
you sort of say to I was staying with the head teacher and I was like, I feel this, and she was like, it's altitude sickness. And I feel this, it's altitude sickness. Like just like my leg hurts, altitude sickness for like a month.
Yeah. Um,
Less of that now.
I mean, we did the Three Peaks in Yorkshire. I don't know if you know that the Three Peaks, like it's like the mini little mountain hill things, and we did it with a guy from Tanzania who's a friend of ours, and he was literally like just running up it. He was like running like up it and down it, and it was just like surreal. Like, but yeah, he's just kind of totally adapted to it. But it was pretty amazing. Um, so yeah. Anyway, but yeah, that's pretty cool. But okay, so yeah, I wanted to ask, how does this project preserve the kind of cultural heritage in Sunderland? I know we kind of touched on a couple of things there, but is there anything that comes to mind in particular when we talk about, some of the reasons that it might do that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, in terms of preservation, I suppose the main thing is there's no real there's no real replacement for being able to go into a space that was historic. Like I used to work in Brighton on Volks Electric Railway, which is the oldest electric railway in the world, and there's no like there's when you're able to be in a space that historical figures were in and experience it the way that they experienced it, that gives you such a connection to your heritage and to the past. Like there's not another substitute for that. So the building is the biggest thing in terms of preserving the past. But then things like we have a collection of we have an archive of objects, including books and
Yeah.
records. A really interesting thing is we have the vestryman's minutes.
Right.
So when people would apply for help, the vestryman would have a meeting and respond. And being able to read that record and see like the generosity of Sunderland 300 years ago,
Wow. That's amazing.
that's so cool. Um, and then yeah, the whole point of it is to activate those conversations about bits of Sunderland's history that we don't always talk about.
Sure.
So someone said to me yesterday that three pillars of Northeast history are faith, work, and football,
Right.
which I really like.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna quote that forever now. Um, and we are faith. Like we're not a faith organization, but that part of Northern heritage gets overlooked in terms of like we talk about coal, we talk about glass, we talk about
Yeah.
how hardworking the Northeast is a lot, and some things just get lost. Some things that are like quite delicate and quite small voices that don't get heard. So we're very much about amplifying those voices.
That's
We're
so
doing a
cool.
project with volunteers who are curating an exhibition, and they're really focusing on trying to highlight those voices that have been overlooked. So looking at like the history of women in
Wow.
Sunderland's East End,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, the legacy of Ira,
Right.
Ida and Louise Cook,
Yeah.
um, and looking at sort of yeah those things that get lost in the shuffle because other voices are quite loud and quite easy to hear.
That's really interesting, and I think it's kind of good as well because it's it's probably an education to some people who may not be as aware about that stuff as certain other things. So I think to kind of incorporate that as part of the project's really really cool.
We talk a lot about. I don't know if you're aware there was a unveiling of a blue plaque I think last week, and it was fascinating. It was linked to Black Lives Matter because
Cool.
I'm going to forget his name. I think his name was Celestine Edwards,
Right.
and he's the first Black editor of a newspaper, and
Right.
he did a lot of work in Sunderland. It's very cool. It's
That's
very
awesome.
interesting. But I think what everyone is starting to ask now is like, we've not been told the full story.
Right. Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
not been told the full story of like quite a lot of space and time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in Sunderland, we can do that. We can hold those stories
For sure. Yeah.
and get them a bit further.
That's awesome as well, and I think that that's great to kind of have some enlightenment there in a sense. I think that that's really cool, and I think it's definitely beneficial as well. I think in a lot of different ways. So,
And hopefully, I think that sometimes we don't always feel like we have like proper ownership
yeah.
of heritage in the Northeast. Like, I don't know. It's definitely how I felt. As someone who's worked in engagement, I always feel
Sure.
like I'm not supposed to go into certain buildings. Like I'm not
Right.
fancy enough.
Okay. Yeah.
And I
Yeah. Yeah.
know
No,
the
I've
opposite.
got you.
The goal is that if we are talking about voices that aren't heard, maybe we can talk about them with people whose voices sometimes aren't heard as well. Like,
Yeah, and I think as well the interesting thing about that is that you're making by making the project as inclusive as possible, including these kind of elements. I think you're also bringing it up to a new audience who, as you said, may not have felt totally comfortable in that kind of maybe environment before. So I think they're kind of opening it up and then having those kind of discussions I think is actually important for those reasons. So I think that's
yeah,
great.
massively. And we were talking before we started recording about how digital life has changed how we do things. So, like, you're doing more work doing like basically like visual guides for like this is what's going to happen when you arrive at this space.
Yeah,
We've all like lots of cultural venues have started being accidentally really inclusive. So
definitely.
like we've all been encouraged for like a decade, 2 decades to start doing things that are like autism accessible, like things like social stories where you just show exactly what's going to happen. Have an option that is like engage with this at home in your own sensory
Definitely,
space.
definitely.
Now we're just all doing that. We're all, I love it.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I'm a big fan of that, and I think that for me, there's something that's one of the reasons that I love film, I love video. It's because it's you can capture memories, and I think that you can go to a place and you can have like a visual memory of that, but at the same time, once you've been there, the memory becomes it starts to fade away. So if you can actually capture that, then it's eternal. It exists forever.
mhm,
So I think that that's the thing. So like the actual development of the building. Like obviously, I'm like, I don't know if I mentioned this. Obviously, or we'll kind of maybe touched on it, but obviously, I'm working on a video project with 1719 as well as we go through. Several short videos and kind of about the development of the building and the different kind of things that you guys are offering. And so yeah, from my point of view, like that's so essential because you can do the hard hat tours and things like that, and they're fantastic because there is something um, unbelievably immersive about actually being there, of course. But at the same time, once someone's visited that, they can't go back and see it again potentially. So, and you'll never they'll forget how it's actually changed or how it originally was. But if we've got that kind of visual kind of process or visual kind of guide, then it's eternalized. People can look at that forever and see how it's changed it all of the great stuff you guys have done.
yeah, there's a famous idea like if you design something for the 1% of people who can't access it, then actually that benefits the 100% of people who can. Like if we make it better for people who can't get up the stairs, then the people who can get up the stairs but are in Canada
Yeah.
are sorted. It's not. It's. I'm glad that we're doing it. I'm sorry that it's taken COVID for culture to sort of catch up.
Yeah, and I mean, it's yeah, we kind of touched on that a little bit, but it's one of the you have to look at the positives all the time, obviously, and that is a positive of COVID is that it's made more people, give better accessibility for stuff. You see all of these kind of art galleries and museums offering free tours, and it's like someone, as you were saying, from Canada may not be able to see a virtual exhibition in like the museum in Sunderland or something. So it's like these things. It's created so much more accessibility and access for people, which I think is a great like. It's one of the good things to do with it. Obviously, there's a lot of bad stuff, but like as you were saying, like that kind of digital access is important.
Like there's a fabulous new app that Sunderland Culture made called Art Crush.
Oh yes, we had Jenny on from Sunderland Culture, and she was speaking a little bit about that. And yes, it sounds awesome.
Really good,
Yeah,
really
yeah, I think
good.
that's so cool. Definitely, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
I
yeah,
just,
things like that are amazing.
honestly, like I'm gonna tar everyone who's in learning, participation, and engagement in culture. We are the worst to engage.
Right,
Like, spent all day thinking about ways to make things accessible for people, and then you go home and go, "Oh, galleries aren't really for me."
right.
Um, and I opened that app. I like downloaded it, opened it, I've used it, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that if I do that, then that must mean that everyone can.
Well, there you go. And I mean, I'm like such a huge advocate of like bringing art. Because you know what you were saying before as well. It's such a strong belief of mine actually is that there's so many people that art or cultural heritage and stuff. It's like if they've never discovered their interest in that, then they don't know that they have it. So they might think, oh, I'm not interested. Now, why would I want to go to an art gallery? Why would I want to go and see this cultural heritage site or something like that? But it's just that interest hasn't been discovered, and I think that
Yeah,
it's kind of shown. It's as you were saying, which I think is so crucial, is just presenting it to them in a way that's going to be appealing to them and saying like, listen, this is something that you may enjoy, and it's something that I've always kind of try to kind of encourage my friends. I go to a lot of art galleries, and it's a similar kind of thing where they think it's a lot of nonsense, but one art's nonsense or something like that. It's something you hear all the time, and then it's like, well, maybe you've just not had something that's kind of been evocative to you. So it's like if you actually go and see it, and if you come with me, and then it's kind of introducing it to it, and it's like I feel like obviously it's different with cultural heritage, but it's still quite similar. Is that
yeah.
people
I
have
don't. I don't think that's a leap. We there's something called Fun Palaces, which is great. So Fun Palaces is organized once a year around Harvest Festival time. It's national. And the idea is it's based on like a 1950s principle that if you organize a plumbing lecture in the same building as an opera concert, then people who like
Wow.
opera might find out about plumbing. People who like plumbing might find out that they like opera. Like there are so
I
few
love that.
spaces where these things overlap.
Yeah, I love that.
So because we don't have a building and because we couldn't have used it even if we did, we on Fun Palaces weekend started asking for how-to guides.
Right.
So from groups in the community who are doing amazing stuff like Meritage Heritime Museum, they're making like a page of how-to guide about how to. I think they were talking about how to steam and bend wood. Like
Wow.
I would love to know how to do that.
That's so cool.
And the idea is that all of these different organizations from Sunderland Maritime Heritage to we've got like a folk group doing one, uh, will contribute to like a little magazine of how to. And if that lands on your doorstep, you might learn how to steam wood or you might learn how to sing a folk song. Like
Amazing. That's so cool. Yeah, and I think that, I mean, yeah, that kind of integrating it like that, that's such an interesting idea, I think. But yeah, and I feel like it's a lot of the issue is that people have misconceptions or certain interpretations of stuff. Like, so if we, like, take art for an example again, it's like if people think like, well, I'm not supposed to, like, I don't understand this, they may think, and it's like you got to think like, that's actually, it's a misconception that you have to have some complex understanding of an art piece, and it's like literally you could just look at it and whatever you feel, that's that's
that's
real, and
the right response.
that's the right response exactly. And it's like I really hate that people have this kind of misconception that like I don't get it kind of thing, or it's like you have to there's some kind of exclusivity and only people of a certain kind of stature can understand such fine art, and it's like it's just so not true. It's like literally it's just like you go and you see it, and if that kind of evokes some kind of response in you, then it's done the job, so
Mm.
it's kind of uh, just opening that, making that as inclusive as possible, and it obviously translates with cultural heritage stuff as well. So
No, I think definitely when I was little, I didn't feel like I was smart enough to know about history. I guess because it's like sometimes you feel like it's about learning dates and names, and I'm rubbish at both of those things.
yeah,
But what I'm really good at is imagining how it felt to be a minor, or imagining it like
yeah,
how it would be to be going through the cholera epidemic in
yeah,
Sunderland.
yeah,
And I am able to create like really strong connections with historical figures, but
definitely.
I'm not good at the dates and names thing. So I think, yeah, trying to like get rid of that idea that there is the art, heritage, culture, that these things are for one person
Yeah,
when really like they belong to all of us.
but I feel like what's so important as well is what you touched on there is about that kind of visualization aspect, and I think that the best way to shape the future is to kind of observe the past and to look at
Mm-hmm.
the past. And if you want a better understanding of an area, looking at the past gives you a great understanding because you can see a lot of the origins of things. So I think that that's actually really important as well. And I think that history can really give you such like a kind of richer understanding of a certain place or culture, I think.
And especially now, like weirdly, it's really comforting to look at the cholera epidemic in Sunderland because they survived that and
Yeah,
they figured
exactly.
out ways to recover. Um, so just that tiny little thing of like, we've done this before.
Yeah, exactly.
That's massive.
It's so true. I've got so one of our learners was saying that I think it's so cool that a group of people are trying to preserve these beautiful historical buildings and the history around the area. And then they went on to say that it's as there are so many forgotten to the point where they can't be restored again.
Yeah, that's
So I
absolutely
think
true.
that's absolutely amazing. And that's a really good point. So thank you for that input, Charlotte. There, much appreciated. So I want to ask you, Lily, have you always had an interest in kind of cultural heritage projects, and obviously, I know you kind of mentioned that you said when you were younger, you felt like you maybe weren't smart enough to understand history, but then the visualization aspect was something that drew you to it. So when did you get into it, and what really drew you to it?
To be honest, it's really recent. So my background is in arts.
Right.
So
Cool.
like exactly like you were saying, you can't get art wrong.
Yeah.
So if you're someone who feels like maybe they're not as clever as the other students or not as good as exams, you can still be good at art, and someone can say that quantifiably. Um, she's good at art. So I did my BA in glass and ceramics down the road at the Glass Centre.
Yeah.
Um, and then I worked in engagement for a little bit. I think that a lot of what gets me going is working with other people, and like it's inspiring to be inspiring.
Yes.
And I'm big enough to admit that sometimes I inspire myself.
That's good.
So I was working in engagement, and then I went down to Brighton to do my NA in inclusive art.
Right. Cool.
And during that, I did a module on cultural memory. So cultural memory looks at things like memorials and monuments, how we remember the past, and it clicked with me that that's what's interesting to me, how we remember the past, not necessarily.
Not the actual facts.
Yeah. How does it shape us? How do we shape it? What mechanisms go into, like, if I ask you about the Blitz, do you feel like you know exactly what that would have felt like?
No way. Definitely. I mean, it's definitely not. No.
Maybe it's just me. Like I feel like I have memories of the Blitz because my grandma would tell me about it, and
Well,
I from that I can be like, oh, I remember like watching planes go over. Obviously don't remember. I'm 30.
well,
Um,
I my great granddad was in he was in the Navy during World War II, and his two brother-in-laws, they were in the army and in the RAF, and we've got pictures in our family album of them all together in their separate uniforms. And actually, there's a series of letters that my grandma has that they would send to each other during the war. So one was like, "Oh, I'm in Africa at the moment," and he was like, "Oh, I'm in France or so on." And it's like unbelievably amazing stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, I love like World War II documentaries. Like I'll watch like a lot of that kind of stuff. And I know what you're saying though. Like when you kind of see what's happening, and especially because it's like you can relate to it because it's like it's somewhere where you kind of you grew up and you can just imagine what these people have been going through, and it's like not to compare what's happening now at all to what's happening then because it's completely different. But like it's just like when something like this hits, like a pandemic, and you understand how kind of completely helpless you are, and it's just like there's just physically nothing that you can do on a personal level, it kind of makes you think like, wow, like imagine if something like that was happening.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
it gives you that sort of like feedback down the years, doesn't it?
Yes.
But I think and side by side with those things of like my grandma telling me about her war experience is that thing that we were talking about silence. So like my grandfather never talked about his war
Yeah,
experience,
yeah, that's
like
common.
never talked about his time in service. So that in my head, that's the worst thing that could have happened to him.
It's
Like
common.
his silence has shaped the way that I think about war and conflict and
Yeah,
that whole period of time, really. That it was so bad you can't even put it into words. Uh, and I think in thinking about history and heritage in those ways, like how do we pass it on, how do we share it, um, that really ignited my interest for heritage. So yeah, that's the answer.
that's so amazing though because my great granddad was exactly the same though. Like he never spoke about it ever, and like I feel like that's quite common, and it's because I think one of the things is that there was nowhere near. I I think no matter what, it's something that it's an experience that to be it was an experience that someone would have that it's just there's nothing else to relate it to. But I think
Mhm.
that obviously the like mental health services just there was just nothing there. You know what I'm saying? So
No.
it's like literally like who were they going to talk to? So they literally was they just kind of in their mind. I guess it was something that they felt like they just had to kind of get on with. But it's like such a a crazy thing that everybody back home would have had no idea what kind of it would have really been like. You know?
And
Um,
but it's such a massive part of history. Like
exactly.
silence is such a massive part of history. There are lots of slave testimonies
Yeah.
from freed slaves that talk about things too horrible to mention, things that you have to draw a veil over. So we just don't know, and we can never know because it's gone.
Yeah.
But you emotionally, you know that that is then turned up to 11. That is that the silence speaks volumes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think for at least for the servicemen I know who were in World War II or in other conflicts who don't talk about it, it's also very much like about protecting the listener.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
you've
That's
gone away
really
and you feel
interesting.
like it's to try and protect someone and then you
Wow.
tell them what you were protecting them from,
Yeah.
you can't do that. Yeah, you
Def-
absolutely can and you should, but
definitely. And I feel like art is such like history and art. They're so kind of like so much great art comes from history, and it's all and a lot of my favorite art is kind of about a certain area at a certain time, and it's like I think that that history and art kind of go hand in hand. And art's one of our best tools of expression. And I think that so therefore, you get some of these poets from something like World War II, and you see some of the amazing stuff that they wrote, and it's like there's so much stuff like that, or even like just some of the so I think that art and history are kind of completely intertwined because you get as I was saying, it's a really good tool of expression. So I think that definitely, and it's a good way that art can kind of educate at the same time. I think as well as kind of
and
evoke
sort of
emotions.
oh sorry, I think I've got a little bit of lag. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm so sorry about that. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think no, it's fine, just as long as you can hear us.
Yeah.
Um, I think that for a long time we've looked at art and history as like art as the documentation of history,
Right.
but actually, like how I feel more and more is that art is the way of accessing and understanding and responding to history.
Right. Yeah. That's a really
So
interesting take. I know. Yeah. I think that's really cool. Yeah. I think that as well. It's like how how can you really describe a feeling though, right? So it's like how like documentaries and things like that will help us to give like a help us have a factual understanding of certain things that happen in history, but art will give you a more emotional take of it because to really understand the emotions that people will like that we're going through, people during what we're going through. um I think art can help on that level, if you see what I'm saying.
yeah, massively. I think one way that it can help is really weird. So when we were talking about like imagining how someone felt, almost like trying to enact it, like a Civil War reenactor or
Yeah.
something. One of the ways that art can really help is in when that fails.
Yeah.
So when you try to understand a historical perspective and you just can't, and you have to acknowledge like we're so different,
Yeah.
like the gap from me to one of the vestrymen who worked in Holy Trinity is so massive.
Yeah.
It's so huge that I'm never going to be able to feel that. But the attempt is the thing. Like
Definitely.
the you learn so much in the attempt of it.
Totally. And that's really important. I think that one of the best things about art is showing you something that you've seen before or that you understand in a completely different light. So it's like you may have seen that thing a million times, but when it's presented in a way that you've never thought about before, that's sometimes when the penny really drops because you're like, wow, I never thought about it like that. And that's what art pieces can really do sometimes.
And you know what? That's fascinating in terms of church architecture and church archaeology, because some of the ways that you can learn about a church literally are by shining lights on it. So
Right? There
like
you go.
taking different light really literally. We found loads of marks in the timbers in the roof that were made by the tradesmen who installed the roof.
Yeah.
And either they came directly from the shipyards and they're marks from
Yeah, I've
sailors,
heard that. Yeah.
or that they've got like a specific archaeological word that I'm not going to be able to remember because I'm too excited. But like people who built churches would put little either little blessings in to try and make
Wow.
it like a more faithful, magic-y place, or to try and take some of that faith and luck home. So they
Wow.
do things like they'd imprint their shoes into things, and they're called soul marks, which is so
Wow.
sweet.
That's amazing.
Um, but yeah, like literally sometimes it's actually shining a light. I'm going, oh, there's a mark there.
One of some of the stuff that I love as well is like how you guys have preserved some of the original whether it's stonework or some of the wood in there. And I know that the roof in particular, you guys have actually built like a roof on top of it, so you actually have the original like roof structure with like a roof over the top of it. So it's like, I think that's amazing that you can really see some of the original kind of woodwork there. um so I
Yeah,
think,
because at one point the roof was raised.
yeah.
Like, yeah, we're
So
for lead reasons.
yeah, it's really interesting.
But it's an like sometimes you work when you go to a heritage site, it feels like every other museum you've been to. But Holy Trinity is such a weird venue. Like it's had so many different uses. It has such a rich and like sort of stubborn history to it. Um, I can't really explain what I mean by stubborn, but it's a really stubborn history. Like it refused to move, but it did change, and it's just a really interesting. It's legitimately an interesting place.
Definitely, definitely. And I mean, like when I go to anywhere that's somewhat old, I always think, as just to go back to the visualization thing we were talking about, it's like when you sit there and you kind of sit in the chair that someone, or the pew that someone has been sat maybe like 300 years ago. It's like a unique kind of sensation to think, wow, this is like, as you said, it's not only been a church, but there was at times where it was maybe a library, and then it was something else, and then it's like that kind of, to think about all of that stuff happening in that one building. I think that's quite fascinating.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the really fascinating things about the East End specifically is like we've talked about it a lot in our volunteering meetings about how the sense of pride in that area is it's like a really bright light bulb. It's so strong, but it's a place that it's like your mom.
Yeah.
Like you can criticize it, you can say something's wrong with it, but if someone else says something's wrong with it,
Yeah.
that's not okay.
Yeah,
It's
I've got
very
you.
much the same in the church.
That's so funny. Um,
Sorry, I
yeah.
didn't mean to be like it's like your mom.
No, no, I know what you mean. I get what you mean. Yeah, so I wanted to ask, what kind of, what's the current developments on the project? Whether that's in the engagement side, what kind of things are you guys doing, or if it's in the building itself. But what's the current developments like? What's going on at the moment?
So building wise, we were supposed to be in there by now, but because of COVID, we're quite significantly delayed. So the opening dates are TBC, but still really positive. The scaffolding is starting to come down, um, and that's really lovely being able to see the church finally like peeping out. Uh, and then in terms of engagement, loads, so much happening. So we were supposed to be running bring your own lunch events. So the idea was that once a month you could bring your lunch to Holy Trinity and just hang out,
Right, yeah, yeah.
break your routine, have a chat, buy a coffee, and just have your lunch break in there. Because we can't do that, we're doing digital picnics
Cool. That's awesome.
every Thursday, 12 till 1 via Facebook Live.
Check it out.
And they're very casual events about reminiscence. So like talking about Sunderland and Holy Trinity in the East End, or very specific things like we've got one on that happens to coincide with International Men's Day.
Right.
So we're inviting speakers to come and share some mental health advice.
Awesome.
But yeah, so that's a very relaxed thing that we're doing. We have a recollection activity happening at the moment. So we're working with University of Sunderland Art and Design students to respond to memories of Sunderland and the East End, and they're going to be making postcards out of those memories.
Wow.
Like, I keep thinking of it as like putting meat into a mincer or something. Like they're going to take the memories and they're going to change them into postcards. So if you have a memory of Sunderland, that's still ongoing, and you can get your memory turned into a bit of art.
That's so cool. So yeah, so just to kind of just to put that in the chat there for all learners, on Facebook it's just is it 1719? That's just the Facebook, is that right?
Yeah,
Cool. So
the
guys,
number 17 and the word 19.
yeah, so that's it, guys. If you want to check that out, guys, I've dropped that in the chat for you there, and you guys can have a little look. And so can you just sorry one more time? Could you just say when the virtual picnics were on?
Yeah, they're on so the first one is this Thursday from 12 till 1 p.m. via Facebook Live.
Brilliant.
If you like our page, you'll get a little
Notification, right?
yeah.
Fantastic. That's absolutely awesome. So yeah, so Charlotte was just saying as well. She was saying that with art, she feels like most people don't think it's important learning about the art history in life, but it will tell you a more. She thinks it will tell you a lot more than what's in your textbook, which I think is a really cool take as well. And Charlotte actually does some really great art herself. She does some quite really good digital art with a graphics tablet on Photoshop and stuff with some drawing, and it's really some really great stuff. So.
Oh, I love it, and I think that is absolutely accurate. Like I say, our hope is to tell the whole story, and the whole story isn't in the book.
Yeah, really cool. I think that's absolutely awesome. Yeah, so that's absolutely brilliant. I'll just check through my little bit of my notes here. So cool. So yeah, I'm not sure how much you would know about this, Lily, because I'm not sure if it's directly related to 1719. But do you know about like other similar projects that are going on in Sunderland like this? I know that Mackie's Corner was something that was getting developed. So
Yeah, so the Heritage Action Zone are doing really great work in Sunderland, especially on like High Street and Mackie's Corner. I'm gonna forget, but yeah, if you put that in Google, you'll find them.
definitely.
So the Heritage Action Zone, they're doing fantastic work, and likewise. Oh, I'd go to so many networking meetings and now I can't remember anything.
Don't worry about it. It's totally fine. So yeah, I wanted to ask as well. So what's the next kind of stages? Like, do you guys? Is it kind of you just kind of taking it one step at a time, or is there kind of an outline of what things that you want to do but you can't quite do it yet, or you've got lined up, or?
So the changing goal now is trying to make a church from the 1700s digitally and COVIDly operational.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So things like we now have to really consider how to live stream from the church
Yep.
into the church, how we're gonna continue to engage with people. I know that Sunderland is quite skilled digitally, but the issue with digital engagement is that you kind of have to know about it to know about it. The point of having a body is that you stumble across things, and it's harder to stumble across things in digital life. So yeah, working on ways to do more analog stuff. So for example, like we sent out 250 postcards to the community for that recollection project.
Wow.
And we're trying to figure out ways to do more analog, socially distanced things. And that might include working in things like radio.
Right. Yep.
It might be more things like via post. It might be events that are socially distanced. But at the moment, we're just trying to get in the building.
So yeah,
Like that's
one
the
step at a
biggest
time.
goal.
Yeah.
And then
Uh,
as things go forward, there are going to be so many more opportunities for people to engage with us. But everything goes via our Facebook page.
yes.
Uh, we're always really keen to have a chat. So if there's something that someone's like, really want to see this in Sunderland, just give us a bell.
Awesome. Yeah. So guys, yeah, I put the Facebook in the chat there, guys, so you guys can check that out. Awesome. I kind of feel like, yeah, we've about covered most of the things that I wanted to get into there, I think, pretty much. So is there anything at all that you would like to add, Lily, or are you about happy with that?
Um. Oh, there is one more thing.
For sure.
We're organising our Christmas by candlelight.
Brilliant.
So that's going to be pre-recorded performances put out on the 18th of December. But we're looking for more performers. So if you
Right.
know anyone,
There you
do
go.
send them away.
Christmas
Uh,
by candlelight, guys. So check it out. I'm sure you guys can see some of that on the Facebook. Is that right?
I think there's something on the Facebook. Yeah.
Perfect. And what kind of
Uh,
performance? Is it singing? It's like singing performance?
Singing, dancing.
All kinds.
If you've got great jokes,
Nice.
it would also work. Juggling.
Cool.
Um,
Fantastic.
we're just we're looking for the best, most fun Christmas
Fantastic.
show in town.
That's absolutely brilliant. So cool.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
So
While we're talking, it's like it's got dark.
it has actually got dark. I put my little lamp on there, but it has got quite a considerably more. I did want to mention that I really like your light, by the way. I think
It's for the plants. It's not for people.
really, oh, so it's like a photosensitive light or something like
Yeah.
that. So cool. But yeah, I mean, I love like the purple's one of my favorite colors. like, but it works and it looks cool. So there you go.
Great. Thank you so much, Daniel. That was
Cool.
a really nice chat.
Yeah, okay, no worries. It's my pleasure. Yeah, I had a great time too. Okay, guys, so yeah, that's it for me and Lily. We are going to go. Much appreciated for you guys stopping by, and big thanks to Lily for staying by and chatting with us today. We've had a great crack. So, okay, guys, yeah, and we'll catch you guys next Friday for another Staying Connected. But that's it for me and Lily for now. So, we will see you later, guys.